social selling. It's one of the hottest trends shaping modern sales. And like any trend, if it's going to be a trend, guaranteed there's going to be a ton of hype, jargon, and quite frankly, nonsense flooding the marketplace on that trendy topic. Fear not, ladies. In this episode of the Power Presence Position podcast, we're going to cut through the BS, explain clearly, jargon-free, what social selling is, and walk you through some examples of how you can use social selling to grow sales this week, this month, this year. Let's dive in. So here's the question. In a world where the rules of business have been written by men, how do women entrepreneurs like us, women who want to make millions of dollars and impact millions of lives, how do we create enormous success on our terms? That's the question, and this show explores the answers. Welcome to Power Presence Position. I'm your host, Eleanor Beaton, and I'm on a mission to double the number of women entrepreneurs who generate over $1 million per year in annual revenue. I'm an award-winning entrepreneur, author, and leadership coach. I'm a wife, mom of 2 boys, and I'm the CEO of a 7-figure business. Stick around because on this show, you'll learn how to think, communicate, and get paid like a 7-figure CEO. Let's go. Okay, queens, welcome to Power Presence Position episode number 441. Where we will talk about how to leverage social selling in your business. If you're a new listener here, hello and welcome. My name's Eleanor Beaton. I'm the founder of Safi Media. At Safi Media, we're on a mission to double the number of women entrepreneurs who generate over 7 figures in revenue. And we do that through entrepreneurship education and business coaching. And quite honestly, our zone of genius is helping women entrepreneurs build a 7-figure foundation by transforming their know-how, their ideas, and their knowledge and expertise into cash-producing assets. And once that's in place, really working with them to step into that next level CEO that they were destined to be. So that's the work that I'm so deeply passionate about. If you are passionate about that for yourself, if you really have that vision for yourself of becoming a CEO who has not only a ton of cash, but also influence and autonomy, then you are in the right place. So let's talk about social selling. I first heard this term maybe like 8 years ago. I think 8 to 10 years ago, I started hearing about this term social selling. And then we had in the incubator a woman entrepreneur who was one of the top social selling instructors and trainers in Latin America. And that's when I started kind of diving into this idea of social selling even more and starting to think about how we might use it inside our own business to grow sales, to grow impact, build relationships, etc. So social selling is definitely a powerful sales trend, and it kind of builds on the fundamentals. So the fundamentals of selling don't change. We'll be talking about some of those today, but social selling is a tool that kind of layers on top. So it's a trend that is shaping how you can get your offerings into the hands of the right buyers at the right time. So if you don't have strong sales fundamentals, I think that social selling could potentially help you a little bit. If you have strong business fundamentals, you have a clear message, you have a clear niche, your offer is clear, you have a good, solid marketing foundation. These are assets, right? If you have those in place and you layer social selling on top of that, dynamite, so powerful. It can really shorten sales cycles. It can help you sell more without necessarily having to be dependent on a sales team. There's so many benefits to social selling. And it also means that, for instance, a sales team that you have in place can focus and devote their attention to really high value conversations and be using other means to connect with people in a more efficient way. So that probably feels, I'm sort of telling you more of what I'm going to be telling you later in the episode. Suffice to say, it's a powerful trend and it can really, really help you grow your business. And I'm so passionate about making sure that people see this as a viable option and really add it to their selling toolkit. And so that's why we decided to do not only this episode, but in fact, a series on social selling and how to use it, because it's just powerful. And I'm really seeing how many of you are not using it. And the irony is that you would be amazing at social selling, right? Like there's so many of you that I connect with on LinkedIn messaging, on Instagram Messenger, direct message. And I'm just like, you would slay if you did social selling. And so it was happening so much that I decided, I'm just going to do a whole podcast episode about it where we can really talk about it and explore it and in a non-jargony way. And you can start to see how might I apply this in my business and how might I start using it. So I'm going to clarify what social selling is. We're going to talk about why it's important to you and your business right now. I'm going to give you some examples actually of how we use it in our business to connect with people, to help people make the decision again about whether it's a hell yes or a hell no. And then also some ideas on how you could potentially use it to make more money this month. So I think you're going to get a lot out of this episode and really, quite frankly, out of the whole series. So if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, definitely go do so that you won't miss a notification next week when we release the next episode in this series, where we take you through a very cool case study of how one woman is using social selling in her own very super distinct way. Like this woman is the opposite of a joiner. She does things her way. I so respect that about her. So she's going to walk you through an example of how she uses it to build her business and build her influence. All right. So let's talk about what social selling is. So social selling is, it's using social media to sell more. Quite frankly, that's what it is. It's using social media to sell more and to close sales. But really, it's about using social media to build relationships with prospective buyers and then not being an asshole and spamming them, but in fact, listening for the right moment to kind of join the conversation and present your offer as a solution to the problem that they have. So it's respectful, it's relationship-based, and it's opportunistic. And some people hate that word, but I'm just like, I don't have time for people who don't like the word opportunistic, because I'm just kind of like, there's good opportunistic and bad opportunistic, right? So, bad opportunistic might be selling black masks outside a funeral. Although quite honestly, even now that I say that, okay, incoming tangent, even now when I say that kind of opportunism still, you might want to, maybe you forgot your mask and you want to wear a mask that coordinates with your outfit. Anyway, let's just kind of put that aside and not get waylaid. Let me not get waylaid by opportunism. But what I mean by that is you're building relationships online on social media and you notice that somebody has a problem that you have. And so you can just connect with them on social media to address it, right? So you're showing up at the right time. Here's what social selling is not. And this is for those of you who are sending me direct messages on LinkedIn that clearly have been written on bulk saying, hey, could you use 15 leads per week? Do you want a guaranteed no-fail system to have 15 qualified sales conversations each week coming directly from LinkedIn messaging? All of y'all who are doing that, please don't send that to me. It's not going to work, right? But I think we see a lot of what I would call more spammy direct messaging. And spammy really means it wasn't relevant, it wasn't valuable, and there wasn't consent. So that's kind of my personal criteria for if I think I'm spamming somebody. And there have been times in my development as an entrepreneur where I was learning how to market and learning how to sell online and learning how to leverage social platforms where I am not too proud to say I 100% what could be a little bit spammy. I think sometimes the fear of being spammy actually holds people back from developing authentic connections online. So they're so afraid of being spammy that you just don't reach out at all, right? You're just hoping and praying that people are going to know about you and your offerings, and that's not going to work either. So understand, even when I use strong language like spamming and everything else, I want you to know that I don't have judgment for that. I literally have love for you. It's about having love for all of those tough as nails women entrepreneurs who are out there creating opportunity, creating employment opportunities, adding value, providing for their families. There's not anything you can do that I'm going to sit in major judgment around, or there's very little that you could do that I would sit in major judgment around. But I know for me, something, if it's going to meet the spammy criteria, it's that it doesn't add value, there wasn't consent, and it's not relevant. If it meets those three things, it's for sure spam. Sometimes I'll get messages that are valuable, they're relevant, but they didn't get my consent, so it's not spam, in my opinion. Anyway, P.S. If you're going to start engaging online and in online marketing, there's lots of opinions about what you should do and what you shouldn't do. My advice is that you develop your own criteria for what is kosher or not kosher in your opinion, right? Let's all do our own thinking for ourselves. All right, so social selling is not spamming people through direct messaging, but what it is, and this honestly is probably the most, I think this quite frankly is the best explanation of social selling I've ever seen. What it is connecting with people on social media. So connecting with potential buyers on social media, building relationships, usually by commenting and engaging on the social feeds. And if you don't know what social feeds are, go ahead and just kind of Google it. And then building up enough rapport with them that you can then take that relationship to private messaging. And then once you're in private messaging, talk more specifically about your offers. So I will walk you through some examples of how this works. So connecting on social media and building relationships in the feed, and then taking that relationship through to private messaging where you are able to begin engaging in more of a sales conversation because they know you, they like you, they trust you. And quite frankly, at that point, they've probably asked. Like it's now relevant to be having that sales conversation. All right. So I understand that this could be a little advanced and we're talking about things that may be going right over your head. Just be patient with yourself. Just be patient with yourself, listen through, because there's big opportunity here. Speaking of, why is it important? Well, according to some research conducted by LinkedIn, close to 80% of salespeople engaged in social selling are outselling their peers who are not engaged in social selling. And we see that because in my company, every time we engage in social selling, we sell more, no question, right? Another one, and this is research that came from a blog, from a Hootsuite article on social selling. In one survey, 1 in 3 business-to-business B2B professionals said that social selling tools increased the number of leads they had to work with. So that's 1 in 3 said by engaging in social selling, I have more leads. And then 40% of those same people said that social selling reduced the amount of time that they spent having to do background research on accounts and contacts to make sure they were doing good targeted outreach. And then the final reason I would say for why social selling is important is because you know what? It is super fun. Like, I really enjoy connecting with people through direct message, talking to them, answering questions, inviting them to join us when that makes sense. Social selling is fun. It's a really great way to use social tools to build relationships and build your business. So I wanted to walk you through an example of how we use social selling to build our business and to grow sales. For example, the Power Presence Position Business Accelerator. So here's how it would work. So we create great content, like social media content, that entertains people, that engages people. When we're sort of entertaining and inspiring people, this is where we're showing attitude. We're showing our ridiculously bold, astoundingly brazen nature. We're making that emotional connection with people. And I think this is really important because I really feel that our marketing content and our social media content, a lot of it is to allow people to opt out. Like, if you aren't the right fit to work with my company, this podcast is going to annoy you. right? My social media is going to irritate you. My emails are going to piss you off. Or they just won't resonate with you. They won't be entertaining or interesting at all. So in my mind, a big part of marketing is actually about, and sales is actually about disqualification, right? It's like, wouldn't you love to know, rather than being like, oh, please look at me, I prefer to think about it like, here I am. If you don't like it, keep scrolling, right? So step one is creating social media content that, again, so level one of that content is it's about inspiring and entertaining people, showing them who you are and who your brand is and who your company is. And that's a really important part. Unfortunately, way too many of y'all stay there. And so we never know what the hell you sell. We don't get the meat and the substance of what you offer, and just quite frank, basic details about how to do business with you. I see this constantly. It's like you assume that we all have PhDs on how to work with you. And I think, honestly, if there's like a number one piece of advice I would have, it's don't forget the basics and the fundamentals. So step one of how we use social selling to enroll people in our Power Presence Position Business Accelerator, which is a freaking amazing program, by the way. We are all about building seven-figure CEOs who grow their business through their assets, not through their hustle. That is what we are all about. If you want hustle, go somewhere else. If you want to be a freaking queen of business who generates growth through the assets that you have lovingly, passionately created, so you do the work to create these powerful assets, and then those assets, they grow your money rather than your hustle growing your money, then we are the coaching company for you. Anywho, so we create social media content that entertains, that inspires, that educates, right? And so we're creating content that educates on our frameworks and our philosophies and, what grounds our teaching. And finally, we're creating content that convinces. And so that's when people are like, I love your brand. I love you. I love your methodologies. Now, just let me make sure that the details of this offering work for me. So that's where things like social proof, demos, often I'll show like the 120-page workbook that we have, printed workbook. It's a manual for Power Presence Position. I'll show them that. I'll show them screenshots of our group coaching calls so that people can see exactly what it's like, again, so they can disqualify themselves or qualify themselves. So step one, you create that social media content, right? That has got to be there because the content needs to start eliciting responses. So once you've got this content and it's out there, people are going to start engaging with you. And so they might post, they might message you about, they might comment on, they might share it. You might see something you shared in their stories. They might like it, whatever. So your content creates engagement or responses. And some of the people who respond are clearly amazing. We would do great working together. So what happens is we're creating the content and then people are engaging on it. Now, honestly, for 85% of y'all, that's where you stop. You comment back and that's it. But that's kind of where the relationship begins because what you've done is just opened up a conversation, right? So people will comment and then typically over time, and it doesn't have to be too much time, a couple days, we're connecting and then maybe we'll message them or maybe they'll message us. And now you have moved from the feed into direct messaging. Now, this is where people lose their creativity. And you all are like, but Eleanor, exactly how do you do that? Well, I'll tell you exactly how we do that. But honestly, you need to come up with this yourself too, because what works for me isn't necessarily going to work for you. So I'm happy to provide you with some examples, but I need you to understand no matter what you do, it's going to be great, right? You try it. Like I told you, I have 100% accidentally been spammy. You know what I mean? Especially in my early years with LinkedIn messaging. And now when I look back, I laugh. You know what I mean? I totally laugh. But guess what? Nothing egregious happened, right? So I really want you to know you don't have to be perfect at this. in the corporate world, people talk about reputations as though they're these fragile eggs. And I think if you're showing up with a spirit of service, if you're showing up aligned with who you are, even when you make mistakes and how you execute on something like social selling, you're going to be fine. You have to have compassion with yourself. You really do, in order for you to take any chances or try any of these cool new strategies and tactics that can really help you grow your company. So a little bit of love there for you. So again, most people, there's a little bit of comments on their social, and that's just where they leave it. And you're hoping and praying that that's going to translate into a sale. And it often doesn't, right? And this is why social media can be such a brutal time suck. So people just spending so much time trying to create this content that gets them no sales, right? It gets them lots of likes, but no money. So it can translate to money. And social selling is the act through which it does over time. So with us, people comment on our stuff, and then we kind of just start, now we know who each other are, right? So we created the content, they liked it or commented on it. Maybe you and I have exchanged messages on social. So then at that point, now I'm like, well, who is this person? And then I'm going to go and check you out, or Talitha's going to go and check you out. And if we think you're cool, right, and interesting, we're going to start engaging with your stuff. And honestly, that truly is the case, right? Like, if we're engaging on your stuff, it's because it's interesting. Like, we cannot make ourselves engage on stuff that is not interesting, just like you can't. Why would you, right? And so that the beautiful thing about social selling is it creates this match of, hey, you're pretty cool. You said that to me because you commented on our social. And then I go and check you out and I'm like, hey, you're pretty cool, right? So there's this mutual commenting on the feeds, and that's typically how it starts. And again, another group of people are just going to leave it there. But social sellers are then going to connect through direct message. So follow me. Great content marketing. That's step one. Step two, elicits engagement in the feed, commenting, that kind of thing, sharing, etc. The relationship starts in the feed. You're engaged with my stuff. I'm starting to engage with you. It's happening publicly in the feed. It's like we met at a networking event. And then somebody, the better social seller, is going to reach out via direct message and say, hey, and I'll give you an example. Great to connect on social. I love what you just shared about X. I can remember in one instance of social selling, somebody shared my podcast. She's now a client. She shared my podcast, and so I saw it on my stories. So I reshared hers, and then I messaged her, and I was like, hey, thanks for sharing the podcast. I really appreciate it. P.S. She put me in with 2 other podcasts that she liked. So then I say, what other podcasts other than these are you listening to? Because I'm a mega podcast listener. So we start engaging back and forth via direct messaging. And that's really how that relationship started. And that starts to create the trust. Then she came to, so here's the next step. So you have a relationship in direct messaging. And then usually I'm not going to be like, hey, why don't you hire me to be your coach? Ew. By the way, needy as hell. Hell no, would never do that. Now, but if you do that, no judgment, but I'm not going to do that, sure as hell. So then it's like, so now you kind of know each other. And then if we have something going on that is relevant to her, that has value to her, I'm going to let her know about it. So in my case, I would reach out and I'd say, look, this is the episode you shared. I'm doing a training on this. This is how it connects to that. Check it out. Okay. And so she maybe comes to a webinar, and you'll know me at basically every webinar that I do. I am always going to be not only educating my heart out and coaching my face off and sharing as much value as I possibly can, but I'm also going to show you, here's how you actually work with me. Like, if you think that listening to this podcast or doing a webinar, if you think this is helpful to you, wait until you're actually working with me. right? So of course, on those webinars, I'm going to share that. So remember, we've gone from great content to engaging on the feed to direct messaging to here's an invitation to come to what I would call a conversion event. So a place where I am able to demonstrate that I can help people by actually helping people, and then invite them to come and work with us, to actually put down the credit card, stop just doing the free stuff, and come and really get their mind blown with coaching and education, right? And so then I invite them to the webinar. And at that point, we're usually just going to send a message, hey, saw you register for the webinar. That's awesome. Let me know if you have any questions. And then typically, after the webinar, so we're kind of communicating that way. And then after the webinar, we might follow up and say, look, how'd you enjoy the webinar? What did you take from it? They'll tell us. And I might say, look, are you going to join us in Power Presence Position? What were your thoughts on that offer? That's what it's like, right? Like legit walking you through. And some of you who are listening have experienced this, and it's just very clear. It's very transparent. It's how we use social media to build relationships, to why the hell are you posting all this damn content if you are not using it to build your business? I think this is the piece that so many of you are missing. You're sort of creating great content and hoping and praying, right? Or creating mediocre content and hoping and praying, right? So this is how you start. And even mediocre content, if you care, if you actually connect with people, because social selling isn't really scalable. And there's a bit of a tyranny of scalability sometimes when it comes to online. You can actually connect with people one-on-one on social media. You can. And that's kind of what it's for, right? So things like webinars or social posts are great about educating people en masse about who you are and what you do. But at the end of the day, what we crave is an intimate, close communication and relationship. And that's where social selling can come in. So for example, on our last launch of Power Presence Position, and we are much more of an evergreen company. So I'm a creature of habit and consistency and discipline, right? So for me, it's about what we're doing every single day. And that's how that's my personal orientation and how I like to roll. So typically with launches, I dislike blockbuster, even trying to do blockbuster launches. We are steady. That's just how I roll. Steady, steady, steady growth and acceleration. So when we do launches, we're doing a webinar, we're not freaking out. Nobody's stressed. There's none of that BS in my house. We're just doing, it really is more about fun. So we launch because it's fun to do. It's fun to do new webinar, and we bring some great people in. But the reality is we're consistently bringing great people in. That's how I like to set things up. Anywho, our last Power Presence Position launch, we did no sales calls. We basically created excellent marketing that entertained, inspired, educated, and convinced. And then it was all through social selling, direct messaging, and emailing and that kind of thing, where people got their questions answered and then they were enrolled in the program. So that's how we use it. It's really fun, really easy, not complicated. But the key, guys, is transitioning from the feed to direct messaging and doing that in a way that is valuable, that is relevant, and there is consent, right? And what I mean by consent is not spamming their inbox with, you need to book a call here, you need to get registered this here. That just never works. People smell that a mile away. And that just, it's got to be relevant. And that's the beauty of social selling. I have had people buy things that are $3,000 from social selling, $6,000 from social selling, $15,000 from social selling, $35,000 from social selling. I personally have bought $5,000 things from social selling, $20,000 things from social selling. And so here's what I need you to know. So for instance, when I spent $20,000, I bought a $20,000 offer from social selling. I heard a podcast. So that was thing number one. Then I read a sales page. That was thing number two. Then I kind of checked it out a little bit online, thing number three. Then I read the sales page again, sent a direct message via Instagram with some technical questions, got those answered via direct message, and then I am sending the wire transfer, right? And it was such a convenient process for me because it was happening in real time. It was great. So here are the keys in my experience to making social selling work for you. First, keep your direct messaging conversations short. Don't be sending people novellas, okay? If you need to sell a novella or send them a novella with all the details, that direct message is not the place to do it, So in order for social selling to really work, when you're actually selling, it's just like kind of back and forth chat, right? That's the energy. So keep your conversations short, be conversational, and honestly, by the time, if you actually want to be closing sales via social selling, you have to have a foundation of solid marketing so that your customer is aware. So remember when I talked about myself purchasing the $20,000 thing, I knew the founder, I trusted the founder because I heard her on podcast interviews. I was educated, so I knew her and her brand. I knew her solution because I had read a sales page about it and kind of all of that. And the sales page was detailed and provided detailed information. And so those questions were answered. So I was entertained and inspired by her and her energy and her brand. I was educated. The sales page itself educated me about the methodology and framework and philosophy. And then there were some pieces of information I needed to convince me. And these were technical details. And so that's what I got from direct messaging. And that's where I find direct messaging really works to close sales. You need to have your stuff together to really leverage the power of social selling by making sure you've got your marketing assets in place, right? You're doing a good job with your marketing. You're doing a good job with the education. You've got the technical details that they need answered. And then, of course, you can go back and forth on social selling to really, provide them with details that they need. So I hope that that's helpful for you. And I want to be clear. I would invite everybody just to experiment with social selling and see how it can work for you. But to really leverage the power of social selling, you're going to want to have certain assets in place. So for example, we have a very good, clear. So for instance, let's talk about the example of selling the Power Presence Position Business Accelerator. So that has a very clear sales page that clearly walks through the details of the program, how much it is, all of that kind of thing. So there's that. We have a webinar, and our webinars also kind of educate, they inspire and entertain. They really, I really make sure that people understand who we are, our brand, our approach and philosophy. They really educate on the framework and sort of importance of the tools that we teach and why it's important. And then they also convince, i.e. give details about the what exactly technical specifications, i.e. of our program, right? So that's another. So the program is clearly defined. The selling, the webinar, that's clearly defined. So I have something I can show people or invite people into rather than having to be like, hey, you need to buy this course, because that again can be super spammy coming out of nowhere. Rather, you can see this person based on the relationship that I formed with them in the feed and the chit chat, that helped educate us about each other. We've had some chit chat back and forth in direct messaging. So there's this trust there. Based on that, I really think this person could benefit. So I'm going to invite them to this free webinar. So you're using social selling to engage in a conversation, present people with more information, and just that opportunity to connect with you. That's how you close sales via social selling. Okay. The last thing, and I'm going to use some military language here. So my pacifists, you might not like this, but that's okay. It's helpful regardless. I remember a sales mentor of mine talking about certain type of selling as hand-to-hand combat. And what she was talking about was the act of actually talking to your customers or prospective customers. And so many of you are afraid to do this. You want to sort of email the proposal. You want to send out the blog post. You want to do the webinar and never have to stand belly to belly with a prospect and talk to them, right? And invite them. So social selling is hand-to-hand combat. It's close, it's belly-to-belly. You are directly engaged with your customer. Many of you are relying on what I would call drone warfare. Let me spray out a webinar from 20,000 feet, right? Let me do that where I'm about as far away from my prospect as I can get and see if that works. No. Social selling helps you get close to your prospects, engage with them. And who wouldn't want to do that? Like, I am obsessed with y'all. I am obsessed with my customers and clients. I think about them. I think about their businesses a lot. I try to think about what would be helpful. I think about how I am modeling great CEO behavior to them. When I screw up, I'm sharing the lessons that I learned. Like, I want to engage and connect with those CEOs and female founders because of the respect that I have for them, right? And just the love. Like, I really, really want to see women entrepreneurs have cash, influence, and autonomy. I want them to create businesses that they love. And because of that, I want to engage with them, right? And don't be giving me any BS story about how you're an introvert. In fact, social selling is even better for introverts. Like, hello, direct messaging, hello. Anyway, so I hope this was helpful to you. Send me a direct message. Let me know if this was helpful for you. And if you'd like more tactical episodes like this. So I'm not going to go full tactics because that is just boring, in my opinion, full tactics. I like a really good mix of tactics and strategy along with mindset and really that sort of CEO level thinking on this show. But I can definitely do some more on this. All right. So I hope you found this useful. Next week, we're going to continue our exploration of social selling. And I'm going to be bringing on a client. She just came into her second year in the incubator program, incredible female entrepreneur. We're going to talk about her business next week, but we're going to talk about a very specific strategy that she has used. She uses social selling to create virtual roundtables that has allowed her to build amazing connections and referral partnerships to really, educate people about what she does in a way that feels amazing to her. And I just loved it because this is a woman, I said off the top, she does things her way. And I love that. Like, I never got out of bed and started this business to tell you step by step exactly how to build your business, right? And anybody who says they can tell you step by step exactly how to build your business is full of it, in my opinion. Because every business is different. That's like, I'm going to teach you step by step how to live your life. What? Rude. Everybody's life is their own to live, and everybody has their own unique circumstances. So to me, it's really about principles, about tools, about coaching and support. And in that ecosystem and environment, we all find our own way. And so then we create businesses that are truly original, are a true reflection of us. We are building the businesses that only we could create. And so when she started talking on our group calls about these really great executive virtual roundtables that she was hosting, I was like, oh, Queen, we need to get you on the show to talk about them with our broader audience here. So definitely get your buns back here next week, same bat time, same bat place for our next installment of social selling on Power Presence Position. If you love this show, then you will love even more my missives, i.e. my emails. If you're not on my email list yet, I strongly encourage you to sign up at eleanorbeaton.com/join. Now, when you go and sign up for my email list, you will quickly discover why some of the most popular, well-known, and influential voices in the world of women's entrepreneurship quietly, studiously, consistently open every single email I send out because they want to be inspired, they want to be entertained, and also I think they really want to connect with a woman like myself who's in full command of her voice and is willing to open up and share her thinking, her ideas, and her story. I promise you that on this email list, you are going to be entertained. You are going to hear really valuable tips about stepping into your power as a leader. And you're also going to get fun insight that I do not share anywhere else. Go to eleanorbeaton.com/join, and I promise you it will be the highlight of your inbox.